We've got the power. Okay, so we're just going to pick a little card, and as always you can choose to pick up some of the words or the imagery from the card if it's of use to you. If it's not of use to you, please don't feel you have to bring any of the words or imagery from the card into your practice. All optional stuff. Oh. So we picked the True Offering card, and I'll read it out to you because the font is absolutely tiny, but it just says, may I release the fears, illusions, and addictions that keep me from true offering. May I relax into your plan, trusting that the next steps will always be shown. Use me, love, use me for the highest. I am yours alone. What a beautiful conversation with the divine, or however you want to interpret that. That last bit, use me, love, use me for the highest, I am yours alone. Yes, beautiful. And that's these cards, if anybody is wondering, the Wild Offering Oracle cards. Absolutely stunning. Okay, I'm going to leave that out for a little inspiration for myself. There we go. And I think we'll just kind of orientate ourselves to the practice, to the space that we're in, perhaps to how we're feeling today. So we could do that by sitting comfortably. We could also do that lying down. There's no right way to sit, just being comfy. You could be on the floor or in a chair. But just taking a few moments to, first of all, check if your seat is comfortable. Do you want to sit a little higher on the blocks or cushions? Do you want to have an initial stretch or a roll of the shoulders to just let go of any initial grip or tension? And then absolutely your control here to decide whether or not it feels okay to have the eyes closed. If it doesn't, maybe we'll soften the gaze to the floor somewhere in front of our seat. And we'll just do a couple of moments of perhaps just taking maybe 1 or 2 deep breaths. Maybe that involves a sigh or a yawn. And we'll come into a 5-point check-in here. And maybe we can start with just taking a moment to check in with the qualities of mind this morning. So noticing maybe the mind has been a little busy trying to get through all the tasks of our morning to get onto our mat today. So noticing, is it a busy mind? Is there lots of traffic, lots of thoughts? Is there any particular story today? Maybe it's a mind of clarity and spaciousness. So just noticing, first of all, the mind. And then perhaps starting to check in with the body, the container of our practice today. And just noticing any sensations that might be here. Noticing anything in our visual system, so maybe behind the closed eyes. Noticing our auditory system, so noticing any sounds that we can hear, so calling and pulling on our senses to orientate ourselves to our practice. Using the olfactory system, the sense of smell. Are there any smells that are obvious that come to you this morning? And even the gustatory system, which is our sense of taste, which we can find if we just generate a little saliva, maybe swallowing. Any tastes in the mouth. And the tactile system, so our sense of touch, the sensation of the felt sense of the body meeting with the ground, or the feeling of clothes touching the skin. And perhaps the interoception sensation of organs, lungs, the breath. Anything else you notice internally. And then eventually just noticing through this 5-point check-in, the breath. If there's any holding or restriction, is the breath free flowing this morning? Does it have an easeful rhythm about it? And then the emotions, is there any strong feelings or associations with us today? Anything we can tend to? And then finally, our energy. Are we fatigued? Are we energized? What are our energy levels like? How much fuel is in the tank today? Do we need to top up? Or do we need to perhaps dissipate? So from all of those gentle inquiries into how it is to be a human being today, perhaps we can formulate an intention for our practice and use that as our anchor this morning. A beautiful deep breath in and a long breathy sigh out. If your eyes are closed, it might be nice to rub the hands together, building that heat, that chi in the palms of the hands, really building that heat. Wait until those palms feel hot, and then cupping, palming the eyes with those palms and just taking a deep breath, absorbing that chi deep into the eyes, behind the eyes. And then just bringing the hands maybe an inch off the face and sweeping the hands over the top of the skull, back of the head, neck, over the shoulders and the arms, just like a little ironing out of our energy, over the throat, Vishuddha, Anahata, solar plexus, Swadhisthana, kidneys, hips, legs, and then maybe ending by just touching the ground, just letting energy ground. Letting anything old shed, let that drop down into the earth. Take a deep breath. It's going to be a nice grounding session this morning, particularly with those of you in Cornwall. You may have noticed the wind's picked up. Rather vattery, isn't it, out there? Cold and windy this morning. Took the dog out and was a bit kind of, ooh, shoulders are tight now. So let's do some just really simple movements. Maybe I'll come onto my mat so it's a bit easier to see. And just really approaching our practice today, inspired by the proprioception. So proprioception is the awareness of our muscles and our joints and our body parts in relation to space. So proprioception is the reason why I can close my eyes and touch my fingers to my elbow. So it's an awareness of your body in space. It's why we take steps when we walk without thinking, because we know where our body is in space. And then the interoception is the felt sense. It's, oh, what's coming up for me now? What is that feeling? What does it feel like for me to be in this pose? Okay. So starting off really simply with a side body stretch, open up the gallbladder and just air the lungs a little bit. So perhaps we'll start in any seated position that feels okay. And again, we could do this in a chair. But taking the fingertips to the floor and a beautiful sense of length in the spine, a gentle hollowing in the belly. And then taking one of your arms to the sky and gently tilting over to the side. And just seeing how that feels. No, there we go. There we go. There we go. Good girl. She wants cuddles today. Naya doesn't like the wind either. She runs away from the patio, the lounge door here whenever it's windy because she hears it rattle. So we're going to pause here for a moment, and you've got options here. If it feels like quite a big stretch or that shoulder's a bit uncomfortable, what can we do about that? How can we feel into that alignment of the shoulder? Well, maybe if we take a little less of an angle, maybe if we try turning the palm up and down a couple of times, we can find a range of motion in the shoulder girdle that feels a little better. For some, it might be that you really enjoy this over the head stretch, and that's wonderful too. But it's just finding a place that really honors the body and checking in with proprioception. So the placement of the arm in space where that feels appropriate, and interoception. How does it actually feel for you? Is there aches? Is there pains here? Do we need to ease off? For some of us, it might be that we've been here for a while now. We can slide the underside hand a bit further away and perhaps deepen. And some people, they like to be still in a pose. For other people, they like to explore movement. Well, I wonder what it might be like for us to circle the arm to mobilize the shoulder joint a little bit more. And I've done some big sweeping circles, but equally, some little subtle micro movements are just as pleasurable. So it's finding out, well, what feels good. You could sway the arm forwards and back. So this is finding the you-ness of you in your practice. Knowing that there's really no right or wrong when we stay with that interoception, when we stay with that felt sense of being in the body and honoring that. So we're going to be here for a few more counts. So I'm just going to count us down from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And as you come out the pose, maybe you imagine a friend just giving you a helping hand, lifting your wrist out at a diagonal, and then just pausing for just a moment there and noticing the side that you've opened. Notice how that feels. And then let's take that to the second side. So setting up by lengthening the spine, hollowing the belly, and perhaps taking that opposite arm up, whichever side, and sliding the underside hand away, and just getting a little feel for that. And just noticing, okay, well, I'll feel that a little bit more through here. Okay, maybe I'm going to ease off, but then it does feel nice to reach the arm over a bit more. And then maybe that sensation softens, and maybe explore going a little deeper, sliding the hand away. Perhaps it felt nice to kind of sway the arm forwards and back. Maybe it felt nice to be still in the pose. Or perhaps it felt nice to circle the arm in any direction, to any depth of movement. What does that top shoulder feel about it? And some might want to stay static or still. Others might want to keep moving. Exploring the you-ness of you in your practice. And what about all the other senses? I mean, it'd be a bit much to go through all of them right now. All of the senses that we explored in our check-in. Is there a particular sense here that gives you a sense of ground and orientates you to the space, to your practice, to being here, rather than maybe disassociating or disappearing or wandering off into daydream? Let's count it from 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and then gently bringing ourselves out of that one. Again, just give yourself that little pause to just absorb the echo of the pose. Fantastic. And then I think it'd be nice to maybe come into a twist and perhaps change the shape of our legs if hips and knees and ankles are getting a bit sore or pins and needles are starting to kick in. And let's take our legs out in front of us. And I like to move the buttock flesh out the way. So I'm going to roll one of my thighs, the inner thigh down, and the outer buttock flesh. I'm just fully blooming that buttock. And then doing the same thing on the other side. So why do we do that? To feel the sit bones. So just noticing if you can feel the sit bones a little more, and notice if one side is feeling a little more presence than the other. Is there a slight discrepancy in alignment? Maybe we want to repeat to that side until we feel both sit bones evenly placed. There we go. And then taking the left knee into flexion, and you can either keep the knee there, or if you want to go a little deeper, crossing that left foot over the thigh or knee. And you could also sit onto something if that helps your back to lengthen out. Now we're going to keep some energy in that right leg, flexing the foot and engaging the right quadricep. We're going to take the right hand to the left knee and the left fingertips behind us. As you press through the left fingertips, draw the lumbar spine towards the top of the mat. And just feel that sense of length moving up through the spine. And it might be that you want to kind of retract from that and then come back into that adjustment a couple of times, just so you can feel that sense of stacking the spine and how that is. And that in itself feels like a little massage for the back. Now, broadening through the collarbones, does it feel okay to gently begin to revolve through the ribs towards the left side of the room? Thanks, Naya. You're so helpful. On your bed, darling. And then we've got options. Again, we could rest the hand on the knee, or we could hug the forearm around the knee or the shin. Some of you might know the variation where you take the elbow across the thigh. All of these are options and all of them are welcome. And as you turn the head, try turning the head like you're saying no in slow motion. So you're looking over the right shoulder and then the left shoulder. And do that a couple of times to just free up any stiffness in the neck. We tend to get a little rigid in the twist in the neck. And then when it feels okay, start to revolve the head towards the left side of the room or towards the back of the room to a degree where it doesn't feel like a strain. So it might be that the chin is in line with the breastbone. Or maybe you continue to revolve the head a little more if it feels okay. Pulling the knee in towards you, lifting the chest, pressing through the back left fingers, taking one more breath. And then think about that beautiful long spine of yours. Can you maintain that length as you unravel to the top of the mat? Continue the rotation from the back of the heart, taking the right hand behind you and taking hold of your left ankle with your left hand. So just taking a gentle kind of counter twist, if you like. Again, you can go as deep or as subtle into that as you desire. And then we're going to come out. Unraveling that left leg. Fantastic. Have a little shake. Hi, Bex. And then bending the right knee and taking that right foot over the left knee. So right foot over the left knee, or you could be on the inside if that feels a bit much on the hip. And then the left hand to the right knee, the right fingertips behind us. And again, just let's not be in any rush. We're trying to balance the vata that is starting to, particularly today in Cornwall, is starting to increase in our environment. So just gently pressing through the back fingers and feeding that lumbar spine, the lower back towards the top of the mat, and using that as a pillar to stack the rest of the spine upon. And then maybe we start to revolve through the ribs towards the right side of the room. Perhaps for some, it feels nice to loop the forearm around the knee. For some, you might prefer taking the elbow over the thigh. And then maybe a very slow motion, no movement of the head, looking from left to right, right to left. And in that range of motion, when it feels okay, can you continue to revolve the gaze to the right side of the room or maybe towards the back of the room, and taking that rotation through the cervical spine, through the neck to a degree that feels wonderful, that it feels of value to you. It doesn't feel like it's creating strain. And that might be that the chin is aligned with the breastbone, or it might be that you go a little deeper. Who knows? Have a play, explore. Let's take another deep breath. And then think about keeping that spine long as we come to unravel the spine, twisting to the opposite side, to the open side, which is the left fingertips behind you and the right hand to the ankle. And just taking a moment there, pausing, twisting into a depth that feels of value. And then unwinding. Gorgeous, absolutely beautiful, guys. And then taking those legs out in front of us, let's just warm and strengthen through the hips. So we're going to bring our hands behind us and puff open the chest. So it's already a beautiful little extension of the spine. It'll give us a little bit of zest in our step. If your wrists are a little tired after a while of doing this, know that you can come out at any point. You could take the backs of the hands together and rest the wrists that way. You could also do this pose with fists. Okay, so know that there are options. We're going to flex the feet. And let's start with the left side, just because it's closest to the screen maybe. We're just going to turn the toes out and slide the left heel across the ground. and then turn the toes in. Easier said than done for me, that movement. We're going to slide the heel back in towards the midline. Good. Now, as you turn the toes out, you might decide that you only want to slide the heel a few inches away from that right foot, and that's absolutely great. Or you might go a little deeper and more dynamic and move a little bit more. So just see how the hip feels about it. I did this pose actually in class yesterday and had two guys that were like, oh, my thigh, my hip flexors going into cramp. It can be quite intense, can't it? So just listening to the body, again, interoception, as well as proprioception. I can feel the muscle here. I can feel the movement of the leg. I can see the movement of the leg in space. How does it feel? Right inside my hip, how does that feel? And the movement of the foot, as you move, is it the ankle that's doing the external rotation and internal rotation? Or can we find that right up in the head of the femur bone? Now, for those of you that want to make this more challenging and a little more strengthening, try levitating the heel and doing the same movement with the foot off the ground. And then turning in. Facial expressions are welcome. My tongue has to come out sometimes on that internal rotation. Just one more this side. And then set down that heel. And again, just have a little moment to rest. Maybe it's a resting of the wrist as well. Maybe for some of you, if you could feel the thigh and hip flexor getting a little juicy there, you'd give that a little bit of TLC. And in your own time, coming to that second side, again, deciding, do you want the hands behind your fingertips pointing forwards to buff open the chest? Do you want to take fists? So finding your way in. And then flexing the feet, externally rotating toes of right foot, Charlie Chaplin right foot, and opening the leg to that right side to a degree that feels of use. And then bringing the toes back in from the internal rotation of the right thigh bone as you bring the heel back to center. And we're just going to repeat that movement. And again, you've got absolute autonomy over the depth of movement, the breadth of movement, the pace of movement. And just noticing how mind might creep in. If it feels a little challenging, this movement, what is that internal kind of response to the pose? And if it feels okay swimming the leg in and out, there's no pain in the hip or anything like that, then maybe we'll levitate the foot, keeping the core engaged to support us, and doing exactly the same movement, but just having the foot off the floor a couple of inches. Okay. Perhaps using our breath as an anchor here. Last one. No shaking on that last one, dropping that foot down, have a little shake again, give that leg a little bit of love if it needs it. And I think we're going to come to tabletop pose in our own way, finding tabletop pose. And in tabletop pose, I'm wearing the baggiest outfit, I know, but we're going to engage the core. Trust me that there's some core activity under here somewhere. We're going to really engage that belly. And remember, if you forget the core engagement, because it's a bit vague, isn't it? Engage your core, that cue. So maybe you could take a fake cough and notice where the coughing muscles create a contraction, and then maintaining those coughing muscles, spreading through the fingers, wrists underneath the shoulders, knees underneath the hips, and keeping that core really fired up. We're just going to send that right arm forwards. Now, if right shoulder is sensitive, or your balance is finding this a little challenging this morning, then your variation could be to just play taking the hand off the floor and then returning the hand back to the floor. And just noticing how that core really helps you to stabilize and find your balance. Over time, maybe you reach the arm a little further towards the top of the mat, and eventually maybe floating the arm to be parallel to the floor with the right palm facing in. So holding these postures, suddenly we realize, actually, yeah, I do need to work quite hard. I do need to keep that core engaged. We can keep the right arm reaching forwards. Maybe that's as far as we want to go. Or we could extend the opposite leg. So we press away with the left heel, rolling the outer left hip down. Now, again, feel into that lower back. Can you imagine almost puffing up the lumbar spine by hollowing into the belly? Stabilizing that core, using those coughing muscles. You can either look down to the floor, or you could look beyond the fingertips. So perhaps playing with, well, which variation works for me today. And we're going to hold this pose. We're going to hold here for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and then just releasing, lightly tapping down. And it might be you want to tuck the toes here for a little rest, especially with that left wrist. It's been supporting us a while there, hasn't it? Tucking the toes under, so you're getting 2 for the price of 1. As you take the backs of the hands to touch, elbows get a little heavy. Or another nice little wrist stretch that we could do, we could take our hands out in front of us, turn the palms away from one another, and then cross the right hand over the left hand, hold your own hand, bring the thumbs towards the navel, bring the thumbs up towards the heart, and then reach the hands out in front of you, keeping the elbows towards one another, shoulders relaxed and down. And then we can unwind from there and cross the opposite wrist on top. So left wrist on top, holding your own hand, thumbs to navel, thumbs to heart, thumbs away, keeping the elbows towards one another. And then unraveling from there, and we're ready to go for that second side. So taking the hands down and tucking the toes, wrists under shoulders, knees under hips. And then this time again, coughing muscles engaged, really important. Support that lower back, guys. We're going to reach forwards with that left arm. Now remember, if that feels really destabilizing, uncomfortable, then you can play with just bringing that left hand up and down from the floor. And just giving yourself a moment to register, where is my center of balance here? Where is my stability? Once you've found it, maybe you reach forwards a little bit towards the top of the mat. Beautiful place to be. If you're reaching out through the left fingers, maintain that integrity of the core and decide maybe if this is enough, we could stay here, or maybe there's potential to extend the opposite leg, which is your right leg. Pressing away with the right heel, rolling the outer right hip down, deciding if you want to look down or if you want to look ahead. And noticing what's going on in the breath. Is it a little restricted? Can you breathe into the kidney space? Can you keep hollowing into that belly as we hold this pose for a count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Releasing the left hand and right knee down to the mat. Again, tucking the toes under. We might sit back onto those heels. Maybe we'll take another wrist stretch. Perhaps it will be taking the hand out in front of us and just bringing the fingers together, opposite hand to the fingers, and just gently pulling the fingertips towards you, just exposing and opening the back of the wrist here, or top of the wrist. Great. You can even pop your thumb into the palm there if that feels more supportive. And then coming to the second side. Gorgeous. Another variation we could do, take the backs of the hands to the floor. It can feel quite nice. Opening up the wrists. Getting a breath. And then have a little shake out. Gorgeous. Let's take our hands down, keep our toes tucked if we can, and start to press the floor away from you. So you're starting to sink the hips towards the sit bones. And as you press the floor away from you, the knees might levitate an inch off the mat. And then slowly starting to pick the hips up a little higher to the sky. And we might lift both heels and lower both heels a couple of times. Or maybe you prefer to pedal through the heels, taking one heel at a time down towards the mat.
Maybe you prefer to be still in the pose. Wherever you are, we're going to take about 3 more breaths in this upside down V shape in our downward facing dog. What does this shape feel like today? Super mellow Wednesday session. We will be coming into a couple of yin postures, but first of all, let's take a leisurely stroll to the top of the mat. We're just going to do 1 round of something that might look a little bit like a sun salutation. So from forward fold, top of the mat, feet hip width apart. Let's just soften those knees and slowly roll up through the spine. Once we come to standing, press down through those strong earthed feet, strong, powerful legs, and reach out of that power. Lengthen up, 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 lengthen through the waist, draw the navel back. Now bend the knees loads, and as you exhale, take the elbows to the thighs. Press the elbows to the thighs, shoulders away from the ears as you extend the crown of the head away from you. Think of it as a supported Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale, take a bow, let the head hang. Imagine looking towards your navel so the back of the neck can breathe. Let's step back with the right foot, releasing the right knee to the mat, maybe down onto a cushion or a folded blanket. We're going to transition here for a little while, so you've got all the time in the world, melting the tip of the tailbone forwards and down, and just loosening off through shoulders. Already here, even in this pose, is there some grip around the jaw? What else do you notice here across the shoulder tops and your facial expression? Anything you notice going on throughout the internal body? Perhaps getting a global sense of having a body in this pose. How's it responding? Perhaps it wants to deepen on the exhalation by getting a little heavier through the pelvis. Or maybe we want to ease off a little bit. Maybe we want bricks underneath the hands. And then breathing in on the exhalation, starting to shift the weight. So the hips are moving back. Think Ardha Hanumanasana, half split. Again, hands can be on bricks or down on the floor. And as we start to straighten that front leg, which doesn't have to be fully straight, we might still have a bend to that knee, but can we play with maybe curling the toes off the mat? Maybe even the ball of the foot. Maybe the whole of the foot can curl off the mat, so just your heel is grounded, and letting the head hang. And then switching between those two forms. So on the in-breath, there's potential to rock forwards, anchor through the top of that right foot. Imagine squeezing the feet towards one another slightly. Exhaling, rocking the weight back, lengthening out that top leg, bowing over the inner left knee or shin. And now the mind kind of knows what the deal is. The mind can take a little bit of a backseat. We can let it have a little holiday. And perhaps when we bypass the analytical mind and the way it thinks about the pose, we can start to then feel about the pose. And it's in that feeling about the pose where the intuition will guide you into a depth of the posture that feels right for the body. Or that intuition might take you into a slightly different shape. So that's fine too. The body wants to move in a different way, at a different pace, different rhythm, different shape. Then that's absolutely encouraged. Closing the eyes can sometimes help with this. We've got about 3 more rounds of tick-tocking forwards and back. And just noticing how this rocking, it has a kind of sweet quality to it, which is tapping into the nervous system, telling the nervous system that it's okay, we're looking after you, we're just massaging the tissues. That's all we're doing. We're massaging the tissues. And after another round, or on this final round, maybe just notice with repetition, if you feel like the body has released even just that 1%, how wonderful. The range of motion may be increased, just that 1%. What a gift. And next time we come forwards, we're going to plant the hands. Now you could slide the left knee back if you wanted to, and find your way into downward dog that way. Or you could tuck the back toes under, get strong and fired up through that back leg, and then sweep the left leg either into three-leg dog before coming to downward dog, or just straight into downward dog. So choices are there. For all of us eventually arriving in our downward facing dog pose, and then taking a leisurely stroll to the top of our mat. Feet hip width apart, take half lift, maybe hands are on the floor or hands are on the shins, half lift position, Ardha Uttanasana. Exhale as we bow. Inhalation flows, we're gonna reach all the way up to the sky, lengthening out through the spine, the waist, the entire body. Exhaling, releasing the arms. Inhale, press down, rising up. Exhaling, emptying out all the breath, bend the knees, elbows to thighs. Inhale, press the elbows to the thighs, hollow the belly, extend through the crown of the head. You could lift the gaze and look forwards if you want to extend the spine a little more. And then exhale, cascade over long leg bones, tuck the chin. We're going to step back this time with the left foot. So left foot's back. Remember, we've got loads of time. So we could drop a pillow or a blanket underneath that left knee. Remember that anchoring through the top of that left foot's going to really help here as well if left knee is a little vulnerable. And as you melt the tip of the tailbone forwards and down in this low crescent lunge, maybe it would feel nice to have some bricks or books underneath the hands. What's the body craving here? Can we let go of the tension in the shoulders, the jaw, the face? Maybe a little shimmy of those body parts to remind them to relax and let go. And on the next exhalation, Ardha Hanumanasana, which is half split position. So we keep the hands where they are, either on bricks or on the floor. And as we start to shift the hips back, the right leg might start to straighten, and the options there to curl the toes and the foot off the floor. So just the heel is making contact with the ground, head just hanging. And we could choose to stay static in the pose, of course, at any point. We can find stillness there, or we might decide to tick-tock forwards and back today. Finding that really kind, that really beautiful idea of an offering of movement for the body, where we're asking the body to gently open through touching it with this movement. And in this pose, if we talk about the energetics, as you lean the weight forwards, you're stimulating the stomach line. So helping to facilitate perhaps the digestion of all that we encounter. When we think of the stomach, we think of the digestion of food. Well, what else do we need to digest? We need to digest all the information that comes in, all the thoughts, all the emotions, all the experiences that we have. And then where else is getting energetically inspired here? Well, the backs of the legs and the back body as we take the weight back. So that is the urinary bladder meridian line, which when we lengthen out this line, the fascial plane on the back of the body, that communicates to the nervous system to relax. And the urinary bladder meridian line, how that connects us to the water element, helping us to go with the flow, to let go. Taking 2 more rounds in your own time, just tick-tocking, or being still in the form, yogi's choice. And next time we come forwards, can we stay forwards, anchoring the hands down, either sliding the right knee back into tabletop, then downward dog, or we could tuck the back toes under, get strong through the back leg, and either step to downward dog or fancy pants. balance, take the right leg to the sky. For an extra little stretch there, pressing through the heel, press the floor away from you, and eventually arriving in downward facing dog. Take a huge deep breath in downward dog, and sigh out any excess struggle or efforting, letting go. And then dropping the knees as wide as the mat, big toes together, and just sinking the hips back. Now you could decide, perhaps a child's pose here. Maybe you want to modify, maybe it feels nice for your body and for your breath to have a bit more of height underneath the forehead. Maybe that feels delicious. For some shoulders that might be tired, it might be nice to narrow the knees and take the arms back, rest the forehead into folded leaf pose. In folded leaf, there's options to hold the heels or the soles of the feet to help ground as well, if that's what you need from your practice. But just take about 2 or 3 more breaths here. Taking what you need this morning, topping yourself up. And if the craving is to stay in this shape that you've chosen, then that is an option. There is another option, and that is to come up and set up for something known as dragonfly pose. So I love working the inner meridians of the legs during Vata season. I know we've only just stepped into Vata season, but because the weather is so Vattery out there today, it feels appropriate to work the kidney lines. So the kidney lines actually connect more into the emotions of anxiety and restlessness and fear. And when that Vata gets kind of exasperated in the system, then we can start to feel those emotions, and we can start to feel a little uprooted, a little lost. So working the inner legs is going to reduce that, hopefully. And we're going to combine that with a forward fold because we know that that calms the nervous system. So let's flex the feet and start off in quite an active posture, actually, and then we'll make it a bit more yin-esque. So we're going to turn the toes up to the sky, flexing the feet, knees are pointing straight up. Thighs are engaged. It's a little bit like you're digging the heels into the earth and trying to drag the heels towards the pelvis, that sort of feeling. Then taking the arms up to the sky, big breath in. And as you exhale, begin to tilt from your pelvis. So it's like you have a T-Rex tail floating up behind you, pubic bones diving under. When you can't get any further, maybe we tap down with the fingers to floor. Can we pull back with the resistance of those fingers to lift the chest through the arm bones, creating more length in the spine? Once we've found that length starting to soften in a little more, perhaps now the spine might start to round. We might start to bow forwards. Once we're in the full expression for ourselves in the posture, let's let go in the legs. Now that we're in the pose, let's let go in the legs, let go in the bandhas. Now, for some people, they like the head hanging. It feels nice. It kind of, the heaviness of the head sort of contributes to the easing into the pose. It kind of encourages you in to that forward folding. But for others, it can be very stimulating of any compacted fascia around the back of the neck, between the shoulder blades, along the rhomboids and down the spine. So if you're in that second camp, then you might decide to take something under the forehead. Sometimes in this pose, I can feel those sensations and they get a little much. So sometimes I'll bring a prop underneath the forehead to just reduce some of that. And if we're used to doing Upavista Konasana in a yang kind of tradition, which I am as well, then the first few moments might be for you to focus on letting go of the muscles. Letting go in the belly. And really melting across the tops of the shoulders and the upper back. Imagine the tissues melting, a bit like butter in a pan. Becoming more pliable. And forward folding and tilting from the pelvis, I find it quite a challenging place to be. And on days when it feels more challenging than others, and I might come up a little higher on my fingertips. Other things I might do is hug a bolster or take a chair out in front of me and rest my forearms on a chair. So if we're not coming right the way down, then that's great too. It's the same pose. Doesn't matter how far away the nose is from the ground. And the invitation is to stay here for about another 2 minutes. That's a long time to receive this posture. But with that as an option. So if you need to come out, then know that that is an option. So I'm going to let you guys just kind of simmer, cook in the pose a little bit, tenderize. So your Wi-Fi is still working, we're still connected. I'm just going to lessen my cues now. So just drawing that awareness to the breath for this last minute and using that breath as your anchor. Take another 2 breaths. And on the exhalation, gently walking the hands in. And we're going to stay in the same shape, but just close our eyes with our spine lifting out of the plant part of the pelvis. And just feeling into the echo, the rebound of the pose. And the contrast of the inward falling that's represented in that last posture, dragonfly or Upavista Konasana as we might know it. The contrast of that inward falling to perhaps the outward environment, the noise, not just the whipping of the wind today, you might not have a windy environment around you, but just the external noise, the movement, the cars, the busyness of the town that you might live in, all the posts on social media, all the emails, all the whizzing around that we do as human beings, and just feel into that stillness now. And that stillness that is ever present, even when we step out into that busyness. We can close the eyes, take a breath and reconnect. So let's congregate, let's come back. Now, I like to lean into my hands here and bring the legs in, bending the knees. Some people like to hold the backs of the knees and bring the legs in that way. So that's another option. There might be a craving for a counter pose. So just feeling, also my body wants to cat-cow, but your body might want to downward dog, or it might want to sit still for a little while. So finding a counter pose, and it doesn't have to be a pose per se, it could be some free movement. It might not have a yoga name attached to it, but just letting your body go where it wants to go after that movement. And after another breath or two of just shimmying and shaking and counterposing in our own way, maybe we could meet on the ground. So we're going to be doing, so to show you from a seated position, we're going to be doing this on our back. So you know, Gomukhasana, cow face pose, often we have the legs involved and the arms involved. We're actually going to do a recline variation, but just focusing on the arms. So we're not going to do the legs. But the movement is, once we're on our back, just so you can see, I'll be inviting you to take a hand underneath the small of the back, reaching the arm up, and taking a hand behind the skull. For some of us, that's going to be enough. But if you do want to go a little bit further, the invitation will be to walk the hands towards one another, and you'll do that by wriggling around. And for some, in Gomukhasana, often we've got the fingers bound here. But obviously, lying on your back, that would be very unkind to the fingertips and the spine. So if you are starting to meet the fingers, just overlap the fingers and flatten the fingers instead of this binding. Okay, guys. So this is going to work the large intestine meridian and the lung line, both of which in traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, are the lines and the organs that govern the metal element or balancing the metal element during the season of autumn. So we'll be doing quite a lot of arm work over the next few weeks together. So let's lie down on our back and just take the soles of the feet to the ground for now. And maybe pressing through the feet that are hip width apart and lifting the hips off the floor an inch or two before setting the hips back down, just to reset the pelvis, reset the hips. And then taking the arms out, maybe at shoulder level, let's start with the left hand and turn the left palm down. Slide the left hand in towards you, hinging at the elbow, and tuck the fingers of the left hand behind maybe the back of the left waist or underneath the small of the back, if that feels okay. And then if that feels okay, let's reach the right arm up to the sky now. And the palm of the right hand is facing upwards and the right arm is reaching behind you. And we're going to bend the right elbow and bring the hand down the back. Now we could rest the back of the head on the open right palm. That's an option, particularly if right shoulder's a bit vulnerable. That could be enough for today. But if it feels okay, you could walk the fingertips of the right hand down the back a little bit more. So maybe the forearm becomes a pillow. And then we can decide, do we want to stay there or do we want to continue to walk the left hand up the back and the right hand down the back? For some of you, as you bring the right elbow a little closer in towards the skull, you might even find the back of the head rests between the forearm and the humerus bone. So the right elbow is moving in and reaching actually slightly away towards the top of your mat, even though you're walking the fingers down the spine. So it's like the arm bones are growing longer. And the left elbow does the opposite. It walks in towards the body as well, but it kind of lengthens down towards the tailbone as the fingers of the left hand lengthen up the spine. So this feeling of the arm bones getting longer. And we take this movement to a degree that feels okay in the shoulders. So there should be no sharp pains. There should be no pins and needles. For me to relax a bit more in the pose, I would benefit personally by taking my feet a little wider and knocking my inner knees together to switch off my hips. Now I can feel my belly relaxing a little more as well. So pausing here, once you've found the depth of pose that suits the body today, just let go, relax. And we're going to do 3 rounds of buzzing V breath. So all that means is we're going to hum. And the tone or pitch of that hum doesn't matter. It's just a hum that comes to you that feels most comfortable. Remember, the computer is muted, so no one can hear you humming. So you can hum as loud as your heart desires, but just feel the vibration moving through you. So in your own time, take 3 rounds of humming. Now let's slowly unwind from the pose. So just take your time. I like to maneuver the left arm first, the yogi's choice, and then unwinding that right arm slowly, and maybe just pausing for a moment on your back with the arms either by your side or out wide, whatever feels most comfortable. And just getting your breath. Maybe feeling the blood pooling back into the hands, particularly for my left hand there. Noticing the weight of arm bones, noticing how you feel, noticing the connection of the back of the heart. And if the time is right and you're ready, we'll take the arms out wide once again, and then turn the right palm to face down, hinge at the right elbow, and sweep the right fingers underneath the back of the right waist, or maybe the hand comes all the way underneath the small of the back. And then thinking about that left arm, let's reach the left arm towards the back of the room, and then hinge at the elbow with the palm facing up, maybe taking the back of the skull to rest on the open palm, or perhaps we can keep going and walking the left hand down the back a little bit more. For some, it might feel okay to walk the right hand up the spine. So we're kind of wiggling in, maneuvering the right fingertips up the spine, the left fingertips down the spine. You might find rocking and rolling from side to side a little bit helps with that adjustment. And the left elbow is feeling a little bit like it's reaching away towards the back of the room, but drawing in towards the midline, towards the head. And then the fingers reach down the spine, long arm bones. And then the right elbow that does the opposite, it reaches towards the top of your mat, towards the feet. And we're dragging that elbow in towards the tailbone and walking the fingers up the spine, long arm bones. And the back of the skull might be resting on the floor, it might be resting on the left forearm, or it might be resting between the forearm and humerus bone. No right or wrong. Maybe the inner knees knock together to release around the hips and in the pelvis, loosen any grip in the belly. And let's take 3 rounds of Brahmi breath, buzzing bee breath by humming at pitch, at a tone that feels beautiful for you. Feel the sensations in the back of the heart center. And this pose is very symbolic of holding our own heart. And then gently in your own time, starting to think about wiggling our way out consciously, mindfully, untangling those arm bones. And finally, taking our final resting or counter pose here. So my craving is to come into the dead bug pose, where we might float the legs and arms to the sky, put a little kink in the knees, And just imagine, I've actually done an illustration of this, of a girl falling into water, and that feeling of being kind of held and that buoyancy of that body. That's what I kind of feel in this pose. But noticing if you're doing this pose, if that is what it feels for you, or is there another feeling? Could you allow the humerus arm bones, the upper arm bones, to sink with gravity into the shoulder girdle and to emphasize the broadening of the shoulder or the chest cavity? It's very connecting into the heart again. Reversing the flow of lymphatic fluid and blood, so very resting for the heart. The detoxification. And then taking one more breath in your chosen posture, whether it's this dead bug shape or any other shape, before setting yourself up for Shavasana. So that might include coming up to grab socks and blankets and other yoga props that could benefit you in your Shavasana practice, which is basic relaxation pose. So that could be lying on our back, something under the knees, blanket over us. It could be a side lying Shavasana or even a downward faced Shavasana if that feels more supportive, if that's of more value to you. And then just taking whichever shape you found, just taking the intention of the next few minutes being about the absorption of your practice, the absorption of the journey that you've taken on your mat today. Maybe as you trace back through the felt sense of the practice, what you noticed internally, both physically and emotionally, as well as noticing any thoughts that came in. What insights are here now for us from our practice? What was of use today, and perhaps what was a learning for us today in our practice? Was there an aha moment? Was there a pose, a place, a feeling, a stillness, a connection, an awareness that helped you to connect to yourself? That helped you to journey through your yoga into the self, through the self, to the self. So globally experiencing the effervescence of your journey. And feel how this part of our practice is the integration. It's that, oh, I met that part of myself. I can be with that part of myself. I can show that part of me love and compassion. I can be here for myself. So really absorbing, taking what you need and shedding what you don't. If I can find it, I'm going to leave you with some words. Walk slowly. It only takes a reminder to breathe, a moment to be still, and just like that, something in me settles, softens, makes space for imperfection. The harsh voice of judgment drops to a whisper, and I remember again that life isn't a relay race, that we will all cross the finish line, that waking up to life is what we were born for,
As many times as I forget, catch myself charging forward without even knowing where I'm going, that many times I can make the choice to stop, to breathe and be, and walk slowly into the mystery. Thank you so much for your time and your energy and stepping on the mat with me today. Feel free to stay in Shavasana as long as you desire. Namaste, yogi friends.